The cabin had been standing at the edge of Pine Ridge Lake for over 70 years. My grandpa, Arthur Bell, built it with his own hands, a sturdy wooden retreat, surrounded by tall pines and the smell of damp earth. After he passed away, I inherited it, along with a lifetime of memories. Every plank, every nail had a story. But when I drove up one weekend to check on it, I found a bright orange notice nailed to the door. Violation of HOA property code, demolition scheduled. I stared at it in disbelief. How could they even touch this? The cabin wasn't part of any homeowners association. Grandpa bought this land long before any HOA existed. Yet a few years ago, a new development called Pine Ridge Estates sprouted nearby, bringing with it a board of smug officials who thought they ran the whole mountain. I drove straight to the HOA office. Inside sat a woman with an icy smile. Her nameplate read, Margaret Dillard. HOA President! Yes, she said without looking up. I'm here about a demolition notice on my grandfather's cabin, I replied. It's not even in your jurisdiction. She finally looked at me, eyes narrowing. Your property sits within our new boundary line. The cabin violates aesthetic and safety standards. It's a liability. Liability? I snapped. It's history. My grandfather built that cabin before your rules even existed. She shrugged. You can file an appeal, but it won't change the board's decision. I walked out fuming, but as I looked back at that orange notice, I remembered Grandpa's words. They can't take what's built with heart. That night I called my cousin Jake, a local contractor. They're trying to tear it down, I told him. Over my dead body, Jake said. We'll fix it up if we have to. We spent the next week cleaning, sanding, and restoring the place. I found old photographs, war medals, and letters from the 1940s hidden in a chest, under the floorboards. Pieces of Grandpa's life that told the story of a man who loved this land more than anything. When I looked around at what we'd uncovered, an idea struck me. If the HOA wanted to erase history, I'd make sure they could never touch it again. I wasn't going to let them destroy Grandpa's cabin. I was going to turn it into a museum. The next morning I started with paperwork. If I was going to fight the HOA, I needed proof, deeds, maps, and records. After hours in the dusty county archives, I found exactly what I needed. A 1951 property line map showing Grandpa's land clearly outside any HOA boundary. When I confronted Margaret with the documents, she didn't even blink. Boundaries change, she said coolly. This was rezoned last year. Without notifying landowners? I asked. She smirked. All affected parties were given notice. Funny, I said, pulling out my phone. Because I never got one. And neither did the county clerk. Her confident expression faltered. You're making a mistake, Mr. Bell. No, I said. You are. That same week, I filed a cease and desist order and a public petition to preserve the cabin as a historical landmark. Jake helped me set up a website called the Bell Cabin Project, posting old photos, blueprints, and stories about Grandpa's service as a woody veteran who built the cabin as his refuge after returning home. Within days, hundreds of locals signed the petition, but the HOA wasn't giving up. They sent inspectors, citing environmental hazards and unsafe structures. One afternoon, I caught a man taking photos through the windows. Can I help you? I barked. HOA compliance check, he said, flashing a fake-looking badge. Not without a warrant, you're not, I told him, snatching his clipboard. He left in a hurry. That night, I stayed up reviewing the photos and letters I'd found in Grandpa's chest. One stood out, dated 1953, from the town's founding mayor thanking Arthur Bell for donating lumber during a post-flood rebuild. Grandpa wasn't just a builder. He was part of the town's legacy. I realized then this fight wasn't just about land. It was about heritage. The following weekend, we hosted a small gathering at the cabin. Families came with stories of Grandpa helping them through hard times. Local veterans showed up in uniform. Reporters took pictures. By the time the article hit the local paper, Family Fights HOA to Save Historic Cabin, public opinion had shifted. The HOA suddenly found itself on the wrong side of the community. But Margaret wasn't done yet. She had one more card to play, and it was personal. I woke up to flashing lights. 2 county trucks were parked outside the cabin. A man in a hard hat approached with a clipboard. Demolition order, he said. You can't be serious, I said. There's a pending injunction. He frowned. This came from the HOA board directly. Said the structure's unsafe and must come down immediately. I called my lawyer, but by the time he arrived, one of the workers had already started cutting into the porch railing. I stood in front of the cabin, blocking the path. "You'll have to move me first," I warned. They hesitated. The police were called. When the officers arrived, I handed them the court papers. "This demolition is illegal," I said. The officer glanced at the documents, then turned to the workers. "Shut it down." "He's right." Margaret appeared soon after, furious. "You're obstructing a lawful order," she shouted. "No," I said calmly. "I'm protecting family property. You lied about the rezoning." She jabbed her finger toward the cabin. "That place is falling apart." "It's dangerous." "It's being restored," I countered. "And it's now under historical review." Her face went pale. "What?" I handed her the latest letter from the State Heritage Commission. They'd officially begun reviewing the Bell Cabin for protected landmark status. "You can't do that," she sputtered. "I already did." After she stormed off, Jake grinned. "Nice move, cousin." But I knew the war wasn't over. Later that week, someone broke into the cabin. Nothing was stolen, but the place was trashed. Frames shattered, letters torn, and a spray-painted message scrawled across the wall. "No one cares about your dead old man." I clenched my fists. This wasn't just bureaucracy anymore. It was spite. I fixed everything, again. Locals came to help. They brought new photos, artifacts, and stories about Grandpa. A retired journalist donated a vintage camera he'd used to photograph. Arthur Bell back in 1958. The museum idea was coming alive. Display cases, signs, even a guest book. Each act of vandalism only made the community stronger. By the end of that month, we had over 3,000 signatures supporting landmark status. The HOA tried one last scare tactic, a lawsuit claiming defamation and harassment, but the judge dismissed it in minutes. And Margaret? She was about to learn what happens when you mess with history. 6 months later, the Bell Cabin stood proudly on Pine Ridge Lake, restored to perfection. The once faded logs now glowed with polish. The porch repaired, and inside, each wall told a story. Grandpa's war medals hung in glass cases, his tools displayed neatly beside old photographs. A brass plaque by the door read, "Arthur Bell Cabin Museum, a legacy of hard work and heart." The State Heritage Commission officially declared it a protected landmark, meaning no HOA or developer could ever touch it again. The opening day drew a huge crowd, veterans, families, school children, even the mayor himself. When I stepped up to speak, I looked out at the faces gathered under the pines and felt my throat tighten. "My grandfather built this cabin from nothing," I began. "He believed in community, in hard work, and in leaving something behind that matters. This cabin isn't just wood and nails, it's proof that one person's legacy can outlast any rule book." Applause broke out. Reporters snapped photos as local news aired live coverage of the event. Kids explored the small museum exhibits, listening to audio recordings we'd restored from Grandpa's old tapes. Jake handed out pamphlets titled "The Bell Legacy, Then and Now." I caught sight of Margaret in the distance, watching from her car. For once, she didn't look angry, just defeated. The HOA had been forced to issue a formal apology and rescind all false claims. Their overreach had backfired spectacularly. Later that evening, after the crowd left, I sat on the porch as the sun dipped behind the lake. The air smelled like pine and old memories. I imagined Grandpa sitting beside me, his weathered hands folded, smiling quietly. "You did good, kid," I could almost hear him say. The wind rustled the trees as if in agreement. The HOA had tried to erase my family's history, but instead, they helped me preserve it forever. The Bell Cabin wasn't just saved, it was reborn. And now, everyone who stepped through its door would know exactly who Arthur Bell was, and what one stubborn grandson could do when legacy met determination.